The Valhalla Academy is one of the world's top 3 hunter training institutions, where thousands of aspiring hunters apply each year, but only a handful are selected due to the competitive admission rate of 1 in 500. On the first day of orientation, hundreds of desperate dudes in formal clothing are bashing the life out of each other, trying to make a name for themselves. But the one who impresses the most is Soyeon of the Donyu clan, one of the top 5 clans in South Korea. Rumor has it that she has godlike abilities and can take down even 10 experienced hunters at once. Soyeon's power stems from the fact that she can directly communicate with the clan's guardian constellation. It is revealed that the top 5 clans in Korea are powerful because the guardian constellations are directly associated with each one of them. In normal circumstances, a hunter receives blessings from a normal guardian constellation or enters into a contract with them. But the 5 great clans have overpowered guardian constellations, setting them apart from the rest, like Thor showing up to a street fight. Soon after, Soyeon's match is about to begin, and she's pitted against a relative nobody named Kim. The entire crowd, the reporters, as well as the director of combat, Mr. Lee, are certain that Soyeon is going to wipe the floor clean with this loser. The match soon begins, and Soyeon wastes no time showing off her impressive sword skills. She also flaunts her elegant mana control technique, sending everyone into a state of frenzy. But when Soyeon charges at Kim, he shockingly dodges and knocks her out with a single punch, silencing the crowd and ending the fight almost instantly. A bright blue ray then radiates from Kim's hand, revealing that he's no rookie and has extraordinary abilities himself. He wonders why everyone's so weak in this timeline, and if he'll ever find any competition at all. 300 years ago, at the Tower of the End, a bruised and battered Kim is engaged in a brutal fight with the Tower Master, King Varch. Kim is revealed to be a martial arts god, and he ends the fight by taking Varch's head off with a spinning sidekick. At this point, the system gives out a notification that with Varch's death, the destruction of the world has been stopped. But Kim doesn't even get to celebrate as the entire tower starts collapsing due to the elimination of its master. In his final moments, Kim laments the fact that he could never get the chance to live a normal life, as he has been a hunter since his younger days. He sits in one corner and begins laughing in despair when suddenly a large rock falls on top of him, crushing him like a bug. But the very next second, martial arts god Kim is reincarnated in the 21st century, in the body of a loser who's also named Kim. Even though he's reborn after 300 years, in a weak and young body, Kim has retained all his knowledge. This makes him really happy, and he thinks of living a luxurious life in this world without the fear of anyone. But Kim's happiness doesn't last long as he soon gets another pop-up notification, announcing that the Tower of the End will reappear in 5 years. Kim is beyond annoyed that he's been chosen to handle the situation again, but he vows to completely annihilate the tower this time. He assures himself that after finishing the task, he will pursue his peaceful and luxurious life, and no one will ever disturb him. Seconds later, he receives another notification, urging him to reclaim his weapons and memories. He has to go to Valhalla for that, and the system gives him the exact address. Kim is confused by what this place is, but he heads to the location anyway. He then ends up defeating the most promising girl in the entire academy with just a single punch, shocking everyone to the core. The next day, Kim is set for another match, this time against the eldest son of the early O clan, named Sayok. He is a muscular and cocky guy who doesn't think Kim is special and vows to destroy him in seconds. But Kim replies with some trash talk of his own and even flips him off, enraging his opponent further. It's then revealed that Sayok is also a prodigy who doesn't particularly focus on strategy or martial arts, but he has a deadly weapon, his body, which is built like a tank. While the other hunters need mana to perform difficult actions, Sayok can execute them using just his sheer strength. His jacked body has more cuts than a poorly edited TikTok reel, making him an absolute force of nature. Soon, the fight begins, and an enraged Sayok charges at his opponent with a devastating punch, intending to finish him off for good. But Kim, who is a literal martial arts god, doesn't rely on his strength, but rather his ancient knowledge. He knows that although physical strength is a great advantage, it's still not enough and has to be combined with the other factors. So, just when Sayok is about to land a punch on him, Kim dodges and casually sweeps him off his feet. He then punches the matchman hard in the chest, knocking him out and ending the match within seconds, just like the last time. As a victorious Kim exits the arena, he wonders to himself that he might be weaker than he was in his previous body, but he's still capable of hunting down monsters like he did in the past. The reporters, meanwhile, are in a state of shock as they can't understand how a powerful hunter like Sayok could fall for a simple trick and lose the match. Some believe that he accidentally tripped and fell, while others think he was too overconfident. But Sayok's father, who's also the head of the early O clan, Cheolshin, is certain that it wasn't just a simple attack. He thinks to himself that even though Sayok never trained in martial arts, he could easily dodge a punch from any of his peers. In the earlier fight, Sayok was provoked, and he got so angry that he used his mana, something which he rarely does. But as he lunged forward to strike, Kim dodged by simply tilting his head, while his hands were still inside his pocket like he wasn't even trying. Cheolshin then puts 2 and 2 together and finally realizes that Kim had already mapped out the attack the moment Sayok started his charge. This means Kim has a monstrous ability, which makes him far superior to the rest of the hunters. Cheolshin is excited by the discovery, and just like a college recruiter spotting a 7-foot teenager, he makes it his top priority to enlist Kim into his clan. But he will have to face tough competition from other clan leaders like him, who are also on high alert to get Kim's signature. Meanwhile, the crowd is getting ready for the final match of the ranking competition, which is contested between Kim and a girl named Erin. She is a member of the Truth Choi clan and has defeated every single opponent with relative ease up to this point. But the simps in the crowd are more impressed by her good looks, which drives our protagonist crazy. Soon, the fight begins, and Kim, as usual, has his hands inside his pockets, waiting for his opponent to make the first move. But even after waiting for a good few seconds, Erin doesn't move, which makes Kim realize that she's trying to read the situation. He believes she's smarter than the others, but not enough to cause him any trouble whatsoever. Kim then marches towards her full of confidence while Erin begins charging her sword with her mana, causing it to emit electricity. This ability is known as the attribute transformation, and only a handful of adults are capable of performing it. But Erin appears to have already mastered it. She waits for the right moment and unleashes her sword to attack Kim. But to her absolute shock, he has dodged it in a flash. A confused Erin then looks around and finds him casually waiting on the other side, still with his hands inside his pockets. Kim retaliates by launching a minor attack of his own, as he would literally eliminate her if he used his full potential. But Erin manages to block it using her sword, something which had never been done before. Kim is genuinely impressed by her quick thinking, but he shows no remorse and follows up with another strike. Erin is unable to block it this time, and she's knocked out cold, bringing the match to an end. Meanwhile, Kim feels that he's seen Erin's sword drawing technique before, and it feels familiar. But it doesn't matter now as he's declared the winner, and ends up topping the ranking list of the competition, while Erin comes second. Later, as the victorious Kim exits the Valhalla building, he's immediately surrounded by a bunch of thirsty reporters and other clan members. They shove microphones in his face and request him to join their respective clans, promising to provide him with huge benefits. They even offer him a large sum of money for his services, but Kim, who just wants to go home and sleep, snaps at the reporters to back off. Soon, media channels from all over the country have Kim's face printed on the first page, where he's angrily flipping them off. They're labeling him as a psycho for his erratic behavior, even though the clan members were just giving him an offer. The netizens aren't holding back either. Many think he crossed the line by cursing at the innocent reporters. The next morning at the Valhalla Academy, all the freshmen are lined up for a welcome ceremony. But Kim quickly gets bored and even lets out a yawn to show his lack of interest. A flashback from a few days earlier then shows the actual reason why Kim is here. He had received a notification from the system, urging him to reach the 3rd floor basement in Valhalla to retrieve his memories and weapons. Back in the present, the boring presentation is finally over, and now the students are divided into different classes. In one such particular class, the instructor is a ridiculously handsome man named Igun, who turns out to be the former executive of a big clan. He's currently irritated that the administration dumped a bunch of overpowered prodigies into his class. Soyeon from the Dawn Yu clan, Erin from the Truth Choi clan, Sayok from the Early O clan, and Kim, the undefeated wildcard from the entrance competition. Deep down, he's not even sure if he can keep this chaos under control. Nonetheless, Igun keeps his composure and introduces himself in front of the entire class, saying he'll be their homeroom instructor from now on. Then, he presses a button, which instantly transports them from the classroom to the middle of a forest. As if that's not enough, Igun activates a defense barrier and summons hundreds of furious goblins who immediately start pounding on it, hungry for blood. This terrifies most of the students, but Kim remains unfazed. having faced far more menacing creatures in his past. When Egon notices his lack of concern, he calls Kim up to the podium and asks if he's confident enough to take on all the monsters alone. In his mind, Egon wants to teach the overconfident brat a lesson, and he's certain that Kim will back out of facing the terrifying creatures. But to his utter shock, Kim lets out an evil smirk and accepts the challenge. He then questions what he'll get for a reward if he successfully eliminates all the creatures. Caught off guard by the response, Egon reluctantly says he'll grant Kim whatever he wants, as long as it's within his authority as a teacher. Kim happily accepts the deal, then asks for a sword which he can use against the ugly creatures. Upon hearing this, Egon becomes even more hesitant, as he wanted the boy to fight with his bare hands. But with the entire class watching, he has no choice but to maintain his image, so he reluctantly draws his own sword and hands it over to Kim. After this, the protective shield is slightly opened, and Kim steps out with the sword in hand. To everyone's utmost shock, he begins slicing the monsters like he's playing Fruit Ninja in rage mode. Kim barely puts in any effort as he takes down multiple monsters with just a single strike, much to the amusement of the onlooking crowd. While all of this is happening, he casually mutters to himself that it's the first time in 300 years he's held a sword, and it seems he's still got it. In the past, the world was chaotic due to monsters, so Kim had to use whatever weapons he could find. But he's still excellent with a sword, as he's showcasing right now. Kim also manages to dodge and evade the monsters' attacks with ease, as their patterns are relatively simple. He's now starting to think they're just system-implemented monsters used for practice and not the real ones. Inside the protective shield, Egon is left in complete disbelief as the weapon he had lent to Kim was just a cheap iron sword. It can't channel mana, and its heavy build makes it far too slow for swift movements. Yet, Kim is tearing through the monsters without breaking a sweat, as if he's been doing this for a long time. Even the prodigy students, Soyeon, Eren, and Seyok, are left speechless at how this skinny guy without any clan affiliation is so overpowered. Meanwhile, as soon as Kim eliminates the last monster, he expresses his desire to go down to the Chamber of Constellations. Egon is clearly uncomfortable with the request, but Kim reminds him of the promise he made earlier. A few hours later, the class has finally come to an end, and Egon tells all the students to go to their respective dorms and get some rest. But Kim has already had plenty of rest as he slept through the entire class like it was a lullaby specially composed for him. He once again starts muttering to himself, saying he'd better get what he needs and get out of here immediately. But as Kim heads to his dorm, he mentions that he did get some information from the class despite it being extremely boring. He particularly got to know about the constellations, which weren't a thing 300 years back in his timeline. Kim then summarizes that a constellation is someone who transformed into a god for their great achievements. Most of them make contracts where the hunters become their divine artifacts, and in exchange, the hunters receive special powers. Moreover, Valhalla is the academy with the third largest number of divine artifacts in the world. After recalling everything he learned today, Kim proceeds towards his dorm to train in martial arts. He knows that even with all the combat knowledge in the world, his weak body puts him at a serious disadvantage. But along the way, he's suddenly stopped by a beautiful classmate, who turns out to be Eren, and they just stare at each other for a few seconds. At the staff lounge, Mr. Lee and Egon are having a serious conversation about this new student who has been creating shockwaves throughout Valhalla. Egon reveals that Kim wiped out over 100 virtual monsters, despite never facing them before. Even seasoned hunters would struggle with that, but Kim did it like it was just another Tuesday. Mr. Lee finds it very strange, as he didn't find anything particularly special about Kim's record. The boy is actually an orphan who came from a small orphanage in a highly dangerous area. Upon hearing this, a stunned Egon asks if Kim is simply faking everything, but Mr. Lee denies it, saying he did some research and found nothing suspicious about the boy's record. Besides, if Kim was hiding something, why would he go through all the hassle just to get into Valhalla in the first place? The conversation shifts to Kim's unusual request to access the Chamber of Constellations, and Egon still looks frustrated over losing the bet. But Mr. Lee tries to calm him down, reminding him that if Kim makes it to the next semester, he'll automatically get access to the first basement floor anyway. He also promises to speak with the director and try to get special permission, which finally brings some relief to Egon. Mr. Lee mentions that the fifth basement floor is the one that is completely restricted, but the first floor can be entered by everyone. It certainly won't be a problem if Kim gets access to his account a bit ahead of time. Meanwhile, Egun once again starts ranting about the students assigned to his class, which include not only Kim but also 3 prodigies from the 5 great clans. He's not even sure if he can keep them in check, let alone teach them and survive the year. Mr. Lee acknowledges that he's having a tough time, but mentions that the class next door has it even worse. He reveals that an exchange student from the infamous Bentrick clan has been placed there, and he's a walking disaster. His name is Roderick, and he was expelled from a private academy in the UK for causing too much chaos. Upon hearing this, Egun finally lets out a smile, realizing that his class is actually a blessing compared to the chaos next door. On the other hand, Kim asks Aaron what she wants, and with a soft tone, she asks him to teach her swordplay. Aaron appears to be greatly impressed by his earlier fight and wants to learn how she can pull off moves like that herself. But the arrogant Kim casually replies with a no as he picks his ear, clearly showing his lack of interest in the conversation. Caught off guard by the rejection, Aaron stares at him in disbelief and asks why not, only for Kim to say he simply doesn't want to. She tries a few more times to convince him, hoping he'll change his mind, but he rudely tells her that he has no intention of teaching her. He even asks her to get lost and walks away from there, leaving the poor girl disappointed and speechless. The next day in class, Kim is talking to himself as usual, like a schizophrenic patient who just escaped a facility. He grumbles about how weak his body is, and even the tiny amount of mana he has is hard to control. But Kim is hopeful that he can solve this problem by finding the item he's been desperately looking for. His train of thought is suddenly broken by the arrival of the infamous Rockdill from the Bentrick clan. Beside him is his attendant Yuria, who looks like she regrets every life choice that led to babysitting this walking headache. An unbothered Kim asks who these 2 are, which leaves Rockdill fuming, but he nonetheless swallows his pride and reveals that he's from the Bentrim family. He then gets straight to the point and asks Kim if he wants power. It is revealed that in most clans, only the main members are allowed to come into power, but the Bentrick clan is different, with the Beak Mask as their guardian constellation. Normally, the guardian constellations select individuals based on their strict criteria and bestow their powers upon them. But in the Bentrick clan, the members themselves will choose who to make contact with. Because of this rare approach, the Bentrick clan quickly spread across Europe, as even the minor members of the family gained power. Rockdill knew that his family was special, so he became very arrogant. But a few months ago, he created trouble at an academy in England, which made him fall out of the family's favor. Now, Rockdill's main goal is to pull off something big for the clan and earn back their trust, hoping to be fully reinstated into the family. To make that happen, he approaches the top freshman, Kim, and asks him to work under him, promising the blessing of his clan's powerful constellation in return. However, Kim is the last person in the world who'd care about any of this, and he flat out tells the guy to get lost. Rockdill, who had never been rejected like this before, is left fuming, but Kim follows up with some more taunts, even calling him an idiot. Rockdill's anger hits its limit, and it looks like a fight is about to break out. But before things escalate, Mr. Lee suddenly steps in and orders Rockdill to return to his own class. The arrogant brat tries to argue, but the moment he realizes that Lee is the academy's head combat instructor, he reluctantly obliges. On the way out, Rockdill throws one last warning at Kim, promising they'll meet again to finish what was started. Later, as Kim is heading back to his dorm, he mutters to himself that today's class was completely useless, and he didn't learn a thing. He still hasn't been able to gain entry into the Chamber of Constellations, and instead got involved with some weirdo student. Kim is also annoyed that the scouts are still trying to lure him into their respective clans, something which he's not interested in. As he ponders all of this, someone suddenly calls him from behind, and it turns out to be none other than Erin. Like a persistent pop-up ad you just can't close, she once again asks him to teach her swordplay, leaving Kim visibly irritated. Elsewhere, in a VIP room at the Valhalla dormitory, an enraged Rockdill is still salty about being rejected by Kim. He starts smashing things like a spoiled brat, unable to cope with the humiliation. Once his tantrum ends, he coldly orders his attendant, Yuria, to contact someone named Desira, saying it's time they deal with a certain problem. But she just stands there in silence, which only makes the pathetic crybaby even angrier. Without hesitation, he grabs her by the hair and yanks her forward, threatening to kick her out of the clan if she refuses to obey. He then slams her to the ground and reminds her to contact Desira immediately, as they have to deal with the problem as quickly as possible. Rockdill also tells her to arrange a meeting with a certain second-year student, and she nervously agrees to do it. On the other hand, Kim is in his tiny dorm room, trying to channel his inner mana by meditating like some wannabe saint. For a moment, it seems to be working as his body begins to emit a faint blue glow. But just as quickly as it appears, the light fades, leaving him completely drained. An out-of-breath Kim then curses at his useless body, annoyed that he can't even focus his mana without feeling like he just ran a marathon. Afterwards, Kim recalls Erin following him earlier in the day, where she once again asked him to teach her swordplay. Tired of her persistence, he threw out a price of 1,000,000 won for a single lesson, expecting her to back off. But that didn't faze Erin, who comes from one of the wealthiest families in the country. She instead asked for his number, casually sent him 100,000,000 won for 100 lessons, and told him to start teaching her immediately. Kim was caught completely off guard by the absurd amount, but he declined the transfer and walked away from there. Back in the present, he still can't wrap his head around how a student could casually send that much money, like she was just buying groceries for the house. Kim declined the offer because if he'd really take her as a student, he'd have to teach her seriously, something which he doesn't have the time for right now. Nonetheless, Kim reassures himself that once he finds the item, he won't have to care about the money anymore. It will also solve the problem of his low mana, making him insanely stronger once again, just like he was in the past. After that, Kim gets dressed, grabs a shovel, and quietly heads out in the middle of the night to search for one of his secret warehouses. He makes his way into the nearby woods, fully aware that most of the warehouses he buried 300 years ago have likely been destroyed over time. Based on his own calculations, only about 4 should still exist, and the one with the highest chance of survival is hidden somewhere in the mountain of Valhalla. Shortly after, Kim reaches the location and uses whatever mana he has in his body to detect the warehouse. The plan works, and Kim manages to find the exact spot. But as he starts digging, he feels weaker than a Wi-Fi signal in the basement, sending him into a fit of rage. Kim curses at his body and says that if he had known he'd be so weak, he would have never buried the warehouse so deep. He then reveals that if it weren't for the Tower of the End 3 centuries ago, there wouldn't have been any need to do any of this. At that time, when the world was on the verge of destruction, there was no place to store his belongings, so Kim created a secret warehouse and crammed all of his stuff inside. After hours of non-stop digging, Kim finally uncovers the entrance to the secret warehouse just as the sun begins to rise. He then wipes it clean with his hands and manages to find the keyhole. Kim mentions that regular keys won't work on this, so he has to use his mana to create a special key which fits the hole exactly. He focuses for a while and manages to forge the key, which he puts inside the hole. Kim then turns it around anxiously, and to his delight, the door is now open. After this, he slides through it and lands inside the secret warehouse, which is full of gold, jewels, and other precious ornaments. There are also a bunch of swords and other dangerous weapons that have just been lying around for centuries. Kim says that he won't have to worry about the money for now, as these ornaments have a combined net worth that likely dwarfs Elon Musk's, and it's enough to fund 1,000 lifetimes of luxury without ever lifting a finger. He then glances around the room and finds some purple rocks, which are revealed to be storage stones. It turns out Kim stored mana in these stones to maintain the warehouses, but now he intends to use it himself to strengthen his weak body. As soon as Kim grabs one of the stones, an influx of energy begins flowing through him, and his body emits the blue light again. Kim is elated that he's finally found the source of his power and lets out a cunning smile. He then decides to collect all the storage stones as well as the smaller gems for now, leaving the heavy gold bars behind. Later in class, Kim is completely exhausted from all the digging he did the night before. As he slumps in his chair in deep sleep, he's suddenly awoken by Erin, who once again urges him to teach her swordplay. Kim is clearly irritated by her persistence, but he can't help wondering why she's so desperate to learn from him when her own Choi clan is the most renowned in swordsmanship among the 5 great clans. He asks her the same question, but Erin responds that she only wants to learn from him as she hasn't seen anyone who wields the sword any better. She's also impressed by the fact that he's always so nonchalant and casual before a fight. Kim, who knows that she's the daughter of the clan leader, says her dad must be better than him, and that she should learn from him instead. But hearing the word father freezes the girl for some reason, and she hesitates to come up with a response. At this awkward moment, Egon arrives at the door and calls Kim to his office, saying it's about the request he made last time. This excites our protagonist, and he immediately gets up from his seat. But before leaving, he nonchalantly asks Erin to come to the training grounds tomorrow sharp at 6 a.m. The shy girl is caught completely off guard and takes some time to process what he just said. This prompts Kim to ask if she's not coming, but a flustered Erin shakes her head and confirms that she will be there. Later, at the teacher's office, Igun informs Kim that his request to access the Chamber of Constellations has been approved. But he'll only be allowed to the first basement floor, meaning any point beyond that is strictly restricted. Although Kim is a bit bummed that he can't go any further, he accepts it without any complaint and asks when he can go there. Igun tells him that tonight would be fine, which Kim finds absolutely perfect. Later that night, Igun leads the boy to the Chamber of Constellations, explaining that this is the treasure of Valhalla Academy. The building appears to be heavily guarded by armed men, who, for some reason, are wearing sunglasses in the middle of the night. When asked about why the security is so tight, Igun reveals that the Chamber of Constellations is very crucial to the Academy, as it is the reason which makes Valhalla one of the top 3 institutions in the country. Kim then observes the place from top to bottom and notices that apart from the guards, there are all sorts of magic circles covering the structure. The only place which is uncovered is the entrance, but several guards are standing there at all times. This makes the building an impenetrable fortress, probably because of the secrets it possesses inside. Meanwhile, Kim decides to ask his teacher a stupid question. He wonders what will happen if he illegally sneaks inside the second basement floor. Igun reveals that although crossing into the second basement won't make him a criminal, he'll be immediately expelled from the academy. Besides, the mana on that floor is extremely powerful, so anyone who goes there will have a mental breakdown. Their mind will fragment into pieces, and the person will lose grasp of reality, turning them into psychopaths. Igun is now starting to get worried as to why Kim is asking him this question before going in. He wonders if the boy will actually go to the second basement floor and create a scene. However, Igun reassures himself that Kim is an obedient student who got first place in the entrance exam, so he wouldn't dare do anything stupid. Soon, the gate opens, and Igun gives the boy 30 minutes to tour the place. Kim promises to be back within that time, and he waves his teacher goodbye before heading in. As soon as the door shuts behind him, Kim opens his system and reads the notification again, which instructs him to go to the 5th room on the 3rd floor of the Chamber of Constellations. Kim's entire purpose of joining the Valhalla Academy was to retrieve his belongings, so he doesn't care if he gets expelled for it. He then shuts down his system and begins walking through the empty halls, which, for some reason, don't have any rooms. Shortly after, Kim descends down a flight of stairs and arrives on a floor which looks more like a prison. He wonders if he arrived at the right place, but then his system pops up and reveals that he has met the requirements. Another notification says that he will now be transported to the room. Before Kim can make sense of what's happening, he is teleported to a different room, where he's shocked to find his arch-rival, Varch, waiting for him. Just like a villain from a 90s Hollywood movie, Varch proceeds to trash talk before the actual fight, but Kim doesn't let him and punches him right across the face. Strangely, Varch doesn't even try to retaliate or block the shots. He just requests that Kim hold on and listen to him for once. Kim obviously doesn't listen and keeps punching him again and again, with the intention of finishing him off for good. All these centuries of pent-up frustration have finally boiled down to this point, and he's ready to complete the chapter once and for all. Soon, Varch is slammed to the ground, and a furious Kim begins stomping on him without mercy, blaming him for destroying his dream of living a peaceful life. However, when Varch questions whether he wants to know about this strange place, Kim eventually stops. The villain then gets back to his feet and reveals that this place is the mental realm, a space within a divine artifact. Varch explains that even his appearance is just a manifestation in the mental realm, as his physical body was destroyed 3 centuries ago in the Tower of the End. Upon hearing all of this, a confused Kim asks if he has been inside the mental realm all this time, and Varch confirms it. This can only mean one thing: Varch has become a constellation guardian. When Kim finally realizes the truth, he becomes even more enraged and starts trashing the poor guy like he's a broken vending machine that ate his last coin. Minutes later, Kim finally comes out of the main entrance, where Igun has been waiting for him anxiously. After he's given a thorough scan, Kim is allowed to leave, and the first thing Igun asks is whether he tried to pull any stupid stunts down there. But Kim, calm as ever, replies that he didn't, since the lower basements were off limits to him anyway. Relieved that the boy didn't stir up any trouble, Igun nods and sends him back to his dorm. On the way back, Kim recalls the encounter at the mental realm, where he asks Varch if he was the one sending him those notifications. He wants to know what those are about and why he was summoned here. Varch admits that he sent the notifications, but even he's unsure about their true intent. He reveals that ever since he died 3 centuries ago, he has been trapped here without any power. Kim doesn't believe a word he's saying and asks who's behind all this. But Varch insists he got a notification too, one that told him to make contact with the reincarnated version of Kim, claiming it would help him recover his lost memories. Varch suspects that the one who made him the master of the Tower of the End is responsible for all of this. But he doesn't exactly know who that person is, as his memories related to that are completely gone. Varch believes that the memories don't all come back at once, so he'll just have to wait. He then asks Kim what was written in his notification, and the latter explains that it asked him to reclaim his memories and weapons as well. But Kim couldn't read the lower part as it was censored, just like in most Japanese movies. With an arrogant tone, Kim claims that he's not missing any memories, insisting he remembers every detail of what happened at the tower 3 centuries ago. But Varch, clearly the more composed and mature of the two, calmly explains that Kim just doesn't realize he's missing anything. He says that now that Kim has found the weapon, the memories will begin to return on their own. Kim is stunned by the revelation that he's already found the weapon, and immediately asks what it is. Varch then reveals that the space they're in is actually the inner realm of Kim's weapon, the legendary Sword of Enlightenment. In a shocking twist, he admits that he became a constellation by using that very sword as his divine artifact. In the present, Kim cannot believe that his sword became a divine artifact, and Varch used it to become a constellation. Kim says that he wanted to destroy the sword, but he couldn't leave Varch unattended, so he left the sword with him. As he's lost in thought, a group of seniors suddenly surrounds him, led by Larrick of the Sunrise Clan, a guy who looks more like a vampire cosplayer than an actual student. Larrick demands that Kim show some respect and greet him properly as a senior, but Kim, who never backs out of a fight, fires back with a few sharp insults of his own. Furious at the disrespect, Larrick signals one of his goons to put the freshman in his place. But the moment the guy steps forward, Kim launches a brutal kick that sends him crashing to the ground. The whole group freezes in shock, while Kim, now fired up and furious, dares them to bring it on. He then whips out his sword and confidently urges the bullies to come at him fast, as he doesn't want to be late for sleep. 3 hours earlier, Larrick is summoned by the notorious Rockdill, who casually asks him for a small favor. He wants Larrick to deal with a certain first-year student, Kim, using whatever means necessary. Rockdill promises to repay the favor by offering support to Larrick's clan, claiming he'll help them however they need. He says that Larrick can use weapons if he wants to, and his team will clean up the mess later on. Since Rockdill comes from a very influential and wealthy family, Larrick can't miss this opportunity, so he immediately agrees. On his way out of the dorm, he thinks to himself that Kim shouldn't be a problem, because despite him being the class topper, he's still a first-year student. It is then revealed that the first and second-year students at Valhalla are fundamentally different because the second-year students have direct contracts with the constellations. This means that the second-year students can harness different powers, making them significantly stronger than their juniors. Larrick is certain that a newbie like Kim doesn't even have a clan, let alone a guardian constellation to give him powers. He thus believes that eliminating the rookie will be as easy as deleting your ex's number. Back in the present, Larrick realizes he's cooked, as Kim is far stronger than he ever imagined. One by one, the thugs charge at him, but Kim, without even unsheathing his sword, effortlessly beats them down like they're inflatable dummies at a martial arts dojo. At one point, a goon gathers an insane amount of mana and unleashes a powerful strike that splits the ground open. But when the dust settles, everyone is stunned to see Kim standing unharmed, having dodged the attack at the very last second. He hasn't even tapped into 1% of his power, yet he's dismantling the entire group like it's a warm-up exercise. Watching it all unfold, Larrick is left speechless, and he's unable to understand how a freshman is turning his elite squad into punching bags. He's also confused by the manner Kim swings his blade, as if he's drawing the opponents toward him. Shortly after, nearly all the thugs are down, leaving only Larrick and a few of his henchmen still standing. Desperate and furious, Larrick charges at Kim with his sword, pouring every last bit of his mana into the attack. But before he can even get close, Kim moves first and lands a light tap that sends Larrick flying and crashing to the ground like a ragdoll. Next, Kim slaps the unconscious Larrick awake and demands to know why they attacked him. He asks if someone sent them, but Larrick insists that they just wanted to teach him a lesson. Realizing the guy won't snitch on whoever's really behind it, Kim decides to let it go and turns to leave. But before he can walk away, Lyric calls out to him, warning that after this incident, Kim's days at the academy are numbered. He claims the authorities will probably expel him for his violent conduct. However, an unfazed Kim replies that Lyric wouldn't dare report what happened, because doing so would mean admitting that a senior led a group to attack a defenseless freshman, and still got completely wrecked. If word got out, not only would Lyric's reputation be in ruins, but any chance he had of joining a major clan would vanish. Saying this much, a victorious Kim walks away from there, leaving Lyric further humiliated. Meanwhile, an excited Rockdale sits in his dorm, eagerly waiting for Lyric to call and deliver the good news. The call finally comes, but instead of the victory he was expecting, Lyric says he's done with all this. A confused Rockdale asks what happened, but Lyric simply replies that he wants nothing to do with the freshman Kim. Upon hearing this, Rockdale finally realizes that his plan failed as his goons were beaten up by Kim. Trying to salvage the situation, Rockdale quickly changes his approach and asks Lyric to at least report the incident to the teacher's office. He promises to pay him the full amount and even offers to connect him with the Bentrick clan. However, a bruised and battered Lyric, who is staggering home with his friends, firmly refuses. He says he won't report anything because he values his honor more than money or connections. Rockdale tries to change his mind by offering more money, but Lyric doesn't listen and simply hangs up the call. This leaves the crybaby Rockdale so furious that he smashes his phone on the ground. He then turns to his attendant, Yuria, and asks if she has contacted Desira already. She confirms that she has, but says it will take some time for him to arrive as he's coming from a faraway place. Meanwhile, at the Apria Academy in Mexico, a pile of human bodies lay on top of one another. The carnage is the work of Desira, another infamous member of the Bentrick family. The guy has so many battle scars on his face that he could easily audition for a villain in a John Wick movie. He learns that Rockdale has a mission for him, which involves taking out a freshman named Kim. In return, he will be given a large amount of money and other extravagant benefits. Since Desira is short on cash after he was kicked out of the family, he immediately agrees to the offer and prepares for his departure. The next morning at the Valhalla Physical Training Center, Kim arrives in full gym gear, ready to get in a solid workout. But just as he's about to begin, he is interrupted by Varch, who talks to him out of nowhere. Startled, Kim looks around in confusion and asks where he is, to which Varch casually replies that he's inside Kim's sword. This brings some relief to Kim, who thought his arch-nemesis had escaped and was ready to send him back to hell again. Varch assures him that he hasn't escaped, so Kim carries on with his day and starts doing some light exercises. Shortly after, he's approached by Erin, who's also arrived in her gym outfit and wants to start the sword lessons right away. However, Kim says they'll need to work on her stamina first, as it is more important than any skill. He then asks her to stretch with him and explains that improving stamina allows the body to better absorb and control mana. Kim mutters to himself that the modern training trends have got it all wrong, as they put everything into mana training before they even have enough stamina to control it. He believes that Erin is no different, as her mana pool is incredibly deep, but she has the stamina of a person who smokes 30 cigarettes a day. Shortly after, Erin finishes her stretching and gets ready to begin actual training. Kim wastes no time and puts her through a series of intense exercises, followed by some weightlifting. But within minutes, Erin runs out of energy and collapses to the ground, completely out of breath. She's struggling to even get back on her feet, but Kim casually tells her that was just the warm-up, and now the real training begins. They will have to first run 10 miles at full speed, and upon hearing this, Erin begins sweating like a thief at a police checkpoint. A few hours later, both of them arrive in class on time. Kim is looking fresh and confident, while Erin drags herself in, completely drained from the hellish physical routine she just survived. Today's class focuses on labyrinth monsters and how to deal with them, so the instructor, Lilia, says they're going to take a simple written text. She hands out sheets of paper to all the students and asks them to write down how they would deal with these monsters while following the official strategies. Soon after, the test begins, and all the students immediately get to writing, but Erin struggles to even hold her pen properly as her entire energy has been drained from the brutal training earlier. Minutes later, the test comes to an end, and Lilia collects all the papers from the back to the front. She explains that while the test won't be reflected in the grades, she will use it as a reference to measure the students' ability for the next class. Lilia announces that in the next class, they will begin the real training at the combat facility. She then bids her class goodbye and departs, and Kim replies back like an obedient student, but this prompts Varch to make fun of him. Annoyed, Kim asks if he can hear his thoughts as well, to which Varch responds that he can't hear all of it, just the ones that Kim is trying to convey. Meanwhile, at the teacher's office, Lilia goes through all the test papers one by one. But the moment she comes across Kim's answers, her face turns red with anger. Few minutes earlier, Egun also arrived at the teacher's office, casually holding a cup of coffee in his hand. He went straight to Lilia, who had just started grading the test papers, and struck up a conversation with her. Lilia explained that she asked her students to review the monster handling methods, and most of them have done quite well. As the homeroom instructor, Egun was pleased to hear his students were performing well and began to walk away with a satisfied look. But just as he reached the door, Lilia suddenly shouted Kim's name, clearly indicating that he'd done something wrong. In the present, Egun rushes over to Lilia and asks if there's something wrong with Kim's answers. But the enraged teacher says the boy has insulted her class. She now intends to use him as an example in their next class, by showing him that labyrinth monsters can't be dealt with that easily. A week later, Lilia brings the entire class to the virtual combat simulation facility and begins by announcing the results of their written tests. She explains that most students performed quite well, but there was one who absolutely butchered it with his horrible answers. She then calls Kim to the front of the class and displays his test paper for everyone to see. His answers are written so casually, they look like they were scribbled by a toddler. Lilia says she gave him a big fat 0 for his ridiculous responses and asks if he even took the test seriously. The first question asked about the most effective way to eliminate a stone goblin, and Kim's answer was to simply stab it in the stomach. The second question was a bit trickier. It asked how to deal with 8 jungle goblins who are hurling rocks at you. But Kim's answer was no different than the first. He simply mentioned stabbing them all and sending them to the afterlife. Lilia, clearly furious, points out that stone goblins have incredibly thick armor, and that standard weapons won't even leave a scratch. She demands to know if Kim really thinks stabbing them in the stomach is going to work. But to everyone's surprise, he responds with a yes, and adds that one strike is all he needs. This is the final straw for Lilia, and she decides to put Kim's bold claim to the test. She presses a button on the panel and summons a stone goblin, which looks like a walking tank with sharp teeth and red eyes. Lilia announces that if Kim can defeat this monster exactly the way he described in his test, she'll gladly admit defeat and award him credit. Kim accepts the offer and casually grabs a sword before entering the arena to face the goblin. Meanwhile, Lilia is aware that Kim once finished off 120 goblins in this arena, but they were just the regular ones. She's certain that eliminating a stone goblin with a sword is virtually impossible, so Kim is destined to fail. Soon after, the much-anticipated fight begins, and the goblin, which looks like a rocky version of Brock Lesnar, immediately charges at Kim. But he easily dodges the attack and strikes the goblin with so much force that the sword is dislodged from its stomach, eliminating it on the spot. This leaves the entire class, as well as Lilia, stunned, as Kim not only managed to stab the rock goblin, but he did so without using any mana. The teacher asks how he was able to do it, but Kim simply responds that he grabbed the sword and stabbed the goblin in the stomach. Lilia is now in deep thought, and she calculates that for a rock goblin to be defeated, one needs to infuse their blade with the mana of a powerful contractor. But Kim is neither part of any clan, nor is he contracted by any constellation, which makes him an absolute nobody. Meanwhile, Kim asks if he can get the credits, and Lilia says he will, but only for the first question. She then immediately puts him to the test again by pressing another button, which causes a labyrinth to materialize in front of him. From inside it, 3 jungle goblins step out, and Lilia reveals that they are known to have anger management issues. If the lead jungle goblin isn't dealt with on time, it will start howling and summon all the nearby goblins from the labyrinth. Lilia mutters to herself that usually, assistance from a constellation using magic is needed to eliminate them all at once, making it a very difficult task. Although there are only 3 goblins right now, 5 more will appear and charge at Kim if he's not careful enough. This time, Lilia is 100% certain that Kim will fail, as it will require godlike sword skills to defeat them all at once. But as she's lost in her thoughts, Kim wastes no time and starts stabbing the goblins one after another, like he's slicing vegetables for dinner. In a matter of a few seconds, he finishes them all and casually asks if he can get credits for this, too. The scene shifts to a few days earlier, where Kim is at the gym training Aaron to build up her stamina. They're both running on treadmills, but while Kim maintains a steady pace without breaking a sweat, Erin is fighting for her life, barely managing to keep up. After what feels like an eternity to her, they finally hit the target, and she immediately collapses to the floor. Erin is shattered and completely out of breath, as if she just trekked 10 kilometers without any rest. Seeing her miserable state, Kim asks if her clan ever put her through any sort of training. He wonders how she's already tired out by this, to which Erin responds that she never trains this intensely. Her response surprises Kim, and he asks how she's going to deal with monsters if she can't even run on a treadmill for 10 minutes. Erin says that she can just use her mana and the power of her constellation, which she's very good at. But Kim thinks to himself that being heavily reliant on just mana is a risk, as one might run into a mana blocking spell. They'll then have to rely on their stamina and other skills to make it out of the fight alive. Kim turns to Erin and asks if this training actually means anything to her, and she quickly replies that it does. However, he can tell she's only going through it to get to the sword training, with no real interest in building her stamina. Still, without pressing the issue, Kim announces that today's session is done, and tells her to take a break while he moves on to complete a second set on his own. After Erin leaves, Varch's voice echoes in Kim's mind, asking why he's even bothering to train her in the first place. Kim responds that he never really wanted to teach her at all, but she was so annoyingly persistent that she kept chasing him around until he finally gave in. Their conversation is interrupted when Kim spots Sayok bench pressing some heavy weights nearby. He questions the macho boy if he comes here every day, and he responds that he does, since his entire personality revolves around his big muscles. After Sayok departs, Varch reveals that Kim can know more about his classmates if he completes the new test in his notification window. The test asks him to go to a place called the Great Forest's Eye with the Sword of Enlightenment in hand. Kim acknowledges that he's heard about the place during class, and it is where the students go for the survival game at the end of the first semester. He mentions that if it weren't for this quest, he would have already run away from Valhalla Academy, so he has to stay out of trouble for at least now. At the Bentrick Manor in London, the clan head, Adela, is talking to her assistant, asking if he has any new recruits for her clan. He reveals that he has found a few promising youngsters, who are all ranked and have impeccable fighting skills. Adela is pleased upon hearing this and asks if there's anything else he'd like to say before the meeting ends. The assistant hesitates for a moment before revealing that Rockdale has summoned the notorious Desira to South Korea for an urgent mission. The news sends Adela into a state of shock, and it's evident that both of the boys have been kicked out of the clan for a good reason. It is then revealed that Desira is regarded as a stain on the Bentrick clan for all the terrible acts he has committed over the years. At the age of 19, he eliminated 5 contractors in his academy over a tiny dispute, which could have easily been avoided by a simple discussion. Eventually, at the age of 20, Desira was banished from the Bentrick clan, but that didn't stop him from committing further atrocities. Adela reveals that the monster ruined their clan's image, and they had to keep their heads down for a long, long time because of him. Worried that Rockdale might stir up more trouble, Adela instructs her assistant to keep a close watch on him for the time being. She makes it clear that if he dares to provoke Desira into doing something reckless that could damage the clan's reputation again, she won't hesitate to banish him from the family as well. Back at the Valhalla Academy, a class is underway, where a teacher reveals that the Wickeds are the contractors who commit different crimes using the power of the constellations. Most of them operate individually, but sometimes they form organizations, and the most notorious of them all is an international crime organization named One Believer. The teacher is spitting out straight facts, but an uninterested Kim is lost in his own thoughts, delighted about the progress he's been making. He starts to realize that his body isn't as weak as he thought, as his strength and stamina have been steadily improving with each training session. Kim's thoughts are interrupted when Soyeon taps his desk and quietly slides him a note, which contains a single word, "Hey." This instantly makes Kim nervous, as the last thing he wants is more interaction with girls, let alone with a baddie like Soyeon. In the next class, Egun announces that the students will be allowed to go off campus this weekend, but they'll have to fill out an application for that. Kim is the first one to fill out the form as he urgently needs to be somewhere. But as he's heading to hand over the form to Egun, he is approached by Soyeon, who had handed him the note earlier. It is revealed that Kim had replied back to him almost instantly, asking what she wanted, but the nervous girl couldn't reply. Now that they're standing face to face, he once again asks if she needs anything, but Soyeon is so hesitant that the words just won't come out of her mouth. Growing impatient, Kim calls her a weirdo and asks one last time if there's something she actually wants. It's then revealed that Soyeon was left impressed in the combat simulation class when Kim destroyed the rock goblin with what looked like a tin-foil sword, without even using any mana. She now wants to learn how he does it so effortlessly, but the moment she finally gets the courage to ask him, Teacher Lilia pops up out of nowhere and asks the same question first. Kim is confused by her sudden shift in attitude, having always assumed that she hated him for humiliating her in front of the entire class. But Lilia explains that his unconventional methods didn't offend her. They actually changed her thinking and opened her eyes to new theoretical approaches. She then places her hand on his shoulder and asks if he'd like to be her assistant. But Kim, who just wants to submit his application form, boldly refuses. The persistent lady tries to change his mind, offering him generous benefits and funding to support any research he wishes to pursue. But Kim has already made up his mind. Meanwhile, Soyeon watches all of this unfold from a distance, and she's embarrassed at how desperate their teacher is. Realizing that Kim will never agree to teach her, she decides not to ask him and walks away from there. The next day is the weekend, and Kim is finally allowed to leave the academy after a long time. He gets dressed in his usual hoodie, which makes him look like a shady thief, and heads to a place called the market. The night before, Kim had carefully laid out his plan in his dorm. His goal was to sell some of the valuable items he had recovered from the secret warehouse. While browsing on his phone for the best places to carry out such transactions, he came across information about a place simply known as the market. What caught his attention was that this market allowed all kinds of trades, with no real rules or restrictions in place. Unlike ordinary black markets, this one had a peculiar origin. It was created and protected by a guardian constellation known as the ruler of the other side. That connection alone explained why, despite its illegal nature, no action had ever been taken against it. The authorities seemed either unwilling or unable to shut it down, and so the market continued to operate freely. While Kim was digging deeper into the market's history and trying to figure out how to access it, his phone suddenly buzzed with a series of emoji-filled messages from Erin. She was clearly trying to strike up a casual conversation, but Kim had no patience for small talk. He replied bluntly, informing her that he wouldn't be able to train with her the next morning because he had important business to take care of. With that distraction out of the way, Kim returned to his research and soon found a hidden link that claimed to provide directions to the market. In the present, Kim follows the directions and eventually arrives at the spot, which turns out to be an old and run-down cafe. As he enters, he finds the place to be in a complete mess, with spider webs all around and the chairs looking like they've been there since World War II. But then he spots a door in one corner of the room, which he's certain will lead him to what Ware wants. Kim carefully enters through that door and comes out to a bustling market, which is full of people like him trying to carry out shady transactions. As Kim walks through the streets, he gets a strange feeling like he's been to this place before. Everything feels familiar, especially the purple skies, the hazy moon, and the huge amount of smoke coming out of the chimneys. Soon after, Kim is approached by a man wearing a leather jacket, asking if it's his first time here. Kim suddenly recalls the instructions from the previous night, which explained that as soon as he enters the door, a guy in a leather jacket would greet him. He would then have to give the man 2 million won as an entrance fee to the market. Trusting the instructions, Kim hands over the money to the man, which he had earned from topping the entrance examination at Valhalla Academy. Kim mutters to himself that now, he's only left with a small amount of cash, so he has to sell something today. Meanwhile, the man asks if he has any questions, so Kim inquires about where he can sell his precious gems. He wants to sell them off very fast and doesn't have the patience to go through an auction, so the man directs him towards a spot called District 3. According to him, District 3 has plenty of merchants who buy everything from gems to weapons, no matter how illegal the items are. He also mentions a guy named Morris, who's known for giving fair prices when it comes to precious gems. Before parting ways, the man hands Kim a mask, saying it's compulsory to wear one due to the shady nature of the transactions. Shortly after, Kim arrives at District 3, where several masked people like him are engaged in buying and selling illegal goods. He spots a merchant nearby and immediately realizes it's none other than Morris. Kim approaches him and says he wants to get something off his back as quickly as possible, and Morris asks to see what he's got. Kim then whips out a small purse, which contains a lot of precious rings and other ornaments. The merchant picks up one of them and begins inspecting it. But within seconds, he's visibly stunned when he realizes it's not just an ordinary ring. It's a relic from the End era. Morris checks the purse again and quickly realizes that every single ring is a relic from the End era, making the entire collection incredibly rare and valuable. Shocked by the discovery and unable to contain his curiosity, he breaks his usual protocol and instinctively asks Kim where he managed to get such items. However, Kim quickly reminds him that the entire point of this market is that customers can trade goods without any questions asked. Morris immediately apologizes and curses himself internally, knowing he had nearly thrown away 30 years of hard-earned reputation over one careless question. But then he honestly reveals that he won't be able to take these precious rings as they're all from the relic era, and he doesn't have enough money to buy them. Disappointed, Kim asks where he can sell the relics for a decent price, and Morris points him toward a large building nearby, which turns out to be the district's official auction house. The only problem for Kim is that the waiting line is very long, and it'll take some time for a slot to open up. Morris estimates that it might take 2 to 3 weeks for the items to be auctioned, and even then, Kim would need to register under his real identity to receive the payment. Uninterested in the hassle, Kim urges Morris to buy the rings instead and asks about their value. The merchant quickly does the math and shows a number, which leaves Kim visibly stunned as it's far more than he had anticipated. Morris explains that even if he sells everything he currently owns, he'll only be able to gather about 3/4 of the ring's total worth. But since Kim is in a hurry to offload them, he agrees to make the deal at that discounted price, leaving Morris speechless. It's then revealed that these relics are precious not only because of their antique status, but also because of their association with the constellations. The rings were so divine that even the constellations were attracted to them, just like a simp when he sees a beautiful girl for the first time. An ordinary man, who owned some relics, used them to his advantage and was able to make a contract with an insanely powerful constellation. The man is still active as a contractor to this day, and his name is Alchemist John. Meanwhile, Morris flips through the rings and finds traces of mana in them, which further confirms the authenticity of the rings. He is over the moon that he's getting the chance to buy these ancient artifacts at such a low price. But just as he proceeds to finalize the deal, a suited man in a mask approaches him, leaving Morris completely stunned. A short while later, Kim exits the market and arrives at the same cafe from earlier, where he finally removes his mask. He then checks his phone and is relieved to find out that his bank account has been credited with a whopping 2.5 million won, which is enough to keep him afloat for decades. Kim managed to earn this crazy amount by selling just 8 tiny rings, so he isn't worried about the finances anymore, as he's got tons of other artifacts in his warehouse. But just as he proceeds to go back to his dorm, he gets a call from an unknown number, which sends him into a state of panic. Kim anxiously picks up the call, fearing that his illegal activities have been tracked by the police. But the person on the other end turns out to be none other than the annoying teacher, Lilia, who casually invites him for lunch as if she's talking to her crush. Kim asks where she got his number from, but the crazy woman says that's not important and insists that he come to the Valhalla restaurant for a free meal before abruptly hanging up. With nothing better to do and the promise of free food, Kim decides to accept the offer and heads to the campus. A few hours earlier at the market, Morris is approached by the suited man, who turns out to be Black Cat, the current owner of this place. He wants to know why Morris applied for an auction anonymously for the first time in ages. The merchant is too nervous to answer, so Black Cat asks to see the items that he listed for the auction. Morris hesitantly hands over the purse to him, and Black Cat observes one of the rings, saying it can sell for a very good price. But seconds later, he receives a flurry of messages from the creator of the market, the Guardian Constellation, whose name is the ruler of the other side. Black Cat goes through the messages and reveals that his master wants this ring. In the present, at the Valhalla on-campus restaurant, Kim finds himself having an uncomfortably awkward lunch with his teacher. He's also stunned by how massive and luxurious the place is, not having realized that the academy offered such high-end amenities to its students. Kim then gets straight to the point and asks why she wanted to meet him here. With a sly smile, Lilia asks him to be his assistant again, but he rejects her before she can even mention the next sentence. Growing impatient, Lilia begins to list out the perks that come with being her assistant, like Kim will get a substantial scholarship. He'll get to publish a thesis with her, and more importantly, he can go off campus twice a week instead of just once a month. However, Kim, who just wants to enjoy his food, once again refuses, stating that none of the benefits sound even remotely tempting. This makes the teacher even more desperate, like a salesman trying to meet his monthly quota on the last day. She quickly shifts to Plan B, offering to reveal crucial information if Kim would just explain how he managed to defeat the goblins so effortlessly. Kim is still uninterested, but the childish teacher blurts out that Aaron is probably going to be expelled from her clan. Kim is completely unbothered by the news, as he doesn't even like the girl in the first place and finds her annoying. He then gets up and proceeds to leave, but a persistent Lilia urges him to exchange at least some tricks now that she's revealed a secret. She goes on to explain that, as a professor, it's her duty to provide students with the best possible knowledge so they can reach their full potential. As Lilia is responsible for combat training against literal monsters, she has to make sure that her students are always prepared so they don't make a wrong move and end up self-deleting. For this reason alone, Lilia is desperate to understand how Kim managed to wipe out the goblins without even breaking a sweat. However, Kim, who's tired of her persistence, simply bids her good luck and walks away from there. Elsewhere, the Grand Master of the Truth Choi clan has summoned his two children, Jinjin and Aaron, to determine which of them will become the next successor. He declares that whoever passes the upcoming selection test will earn the right to form a contract with the clan's divine sword, the legendary Blue Moon Blade. This contract will officially establish them as the heir to the Truth Choi clan, one of the top 5 clans in the country. However, if they fail, they will be expelled from the clan as per the long-standing tradition. The Grandmaster then asks his children if they're prepared to face each other in the trial, and both respond with a yes. With that, he announces that the selection will take place in 3 weeks and dismisses them, allowing them to return to their daily routines. Later, on the way out of the house, it quickly becomes clear that Jinjin and Aaron aren't on the best of terms. Their strained relationship stems from the fact that Aaron is the illegitimate daughter of the headmaster, while Jinjin is the rightful heir by blood. He is envious that an outsider is trying to take away his position, so he boldly declares that he'll destroy her in the selection process. Like a textbook villain, Jinjin even boasts that she won't be able to touch him as he's already made a contract from the constellation while she's just received a blessing. Poor Aaron doesn't even say anything in her defense as she knows she'll never be able to beat him with her rookie-level skills. After Jinjin walks off, Aaron is reminded of a painful memory, the day her mother passed away. In her final moments, her mother had looked her in the eyes and made a dying wish that Aaron should become the head of the clan, no matter what it took. The next day in class, the homeroom instructor, Igun, announces that the midterm exams are about to commence soon. Kim, as usual, is just sitting on his desk without a care in the world, but Varch tells him to pay attention. Meanwhile, Igun reveals that the midterm exams are very important because the lowest scoring student, as well as the ones who fail, are expelled immediately. This means that all the students must do their best in the written as well as practical exams to ensure they can continue their studies in this prestigious academy. Upon hearing this, Kim mutters to himself that while he can take care of the practicals, he's completely unprepared for the written exam. Since Kim needs to stay at this school until he can get to see the Great Forest's Eye, passing the exam is a must for him. Realizing that there's no way he can study all the lectures in time, he turns to his arch-enemy/friend for help. Knowing that Varch pays attention to every lecture and probably knows the material inside out, Kim asks for his help in the exam. The Constellation Guardian immediately objects, calling it cheating and completely unethical, but after a whole lot of persuasion, Kim manages to convince him. Soon, the class ends and the teacher departs after bidding goodbye to everyone, as if he's going on a long vacation. Kim grabs his backpack and is on his way out when he's suddenly approached by a concerned-looking Aaron. She wants to know if there'll be training today, and he responds with a yes. But just as she prepares to leave, Kim asks if she'd finally like to start learning swordplay, as they have only been training physically up to this point. For the first time ever, he talks to her in a polite manner and says he wants to teach her from the very basics. Today, he'll give her a thorough lesson on the gripping technique, which he has mastered with continuous practice in his dorm every night. Kim then asks her to come to the sparring stage next to the gym, and she gladly agrees. A few hours later, the two arrive at the sparring stage, and Kim casually asks how long it's been since she last practiced. Aaron admits that she hasn't even touched a sword since they began training, which was nearly a month and a half ago. Her response catches him off guard, but it also proves how seriously she's committed to his teachings, dedicating herself fully to the physical conditioning he emphasized before ever lifting a blade. Without wasting time, Kim asks her to draw her sword and gives her a few fundamental pointers on how to grip it properly for a more controlled and effective swing. The moment she adjusts her stance and follows his instructions, her sword suddenly surges with a tremendous flow of mana. Shocked, Erin finally realizes how crucial those intense physical training sessions have been. Her body was once as weak as a phone with 1% battery, but it now serves as a proper vessel for channeling power. Kim, meanwhile, instructs her to come at him, using all her energy and mana, as he wants to check her speed and strength. She then gathers a massive amount of energy and unleashes a brutal strike on him that, in normal circumstances, would destroy a tank. But Kim deflects it without even using a fraction of his power, showcasing just how overpowered he is. He notes that she has become much faster now, but advises her not to use too much mana when drawing the blade, as control matters more than brute force. From there, the lesson turns intense as Kim begins giving her detailed instructions on refining her posture, conserving mana, and reading an opponent's movements in the middle of battle. He doesn't give her a moment's rest, telling her to keep swinging at him again and again. As the training continues, Erin starts to notice a major shift. Not only has her strength increased, but she's no longer exhausting herself like she used to. Eventually, she lands a blow so powerful that it cracks open the ground, and even Kim is impressed by her power. Fueled by that momentum, they continue sparring like there's no tomorrow, turning the entire hall into their battleground. Will Erin truly rise to meet her mother's dying wish, or will Jinjin crush her before she even gets the chance? Also, how will Kim react when he finally goes head-to-head with the mean monster, Viscera? Type relic power in the comments if you're ready for part 2. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the recap, and make sure to subscribe for more action-packed content. As always, thanks for watching.